on those. So after today, do you guys have a concrete plan to keep the Security Council's attention on this issue? Like Russia will hold the presidency in February. Do you guys have any plans to call further meetings on the situation?
I'll defer to my colleagues up in New York to speak to the next steps, but I think what you heard from Ambassador Thomas Greenfield today is that she has been intently focused on this, and you heard from her yesterday on television as well. She has been intently focused on this with our allies and partners in New York, but also with the Russian delegation in New York. So whether it is within the UN Security Council context, whether it's within the UN context more broadly in New York, the answer to your question, broadly speaking, is yes. We will continue to keep the focus on this, as I was referring to Matt, across all appropriate fora, the UN being one of them.
Okay. I have a couple of others. So last week, Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman made a comment about the potential timing of a potential Russian invasion, and she was speaking in reference to the Olympics. She said, given the timing and the Olympics starting soon, she said, President, she wouldn't be ecstatic if Putin chose to invade. Now, surely you will say, I'm not in Vladimir Putin's brain and I don't speak for him, but certainly the U.S. has an assessment on this. Is it now the U.S. assessment that Putin will wait until after the Olympics? Can you talk a little bit towards that end?
So there is not much I'm in a position to say here beyond a couple broad points. And you heard this from Secretary Austin, you heard this from Chairman Milley last week. We don't believe that Vladimir Putin has made a firm decision. The other point is that only one person can make that decision. So if Putin hasn't made a decision, that decision to move forward or not has yet been made. It is our goal in all of this to attempt to influence Moscow's decision-making and Moscow's calculus, because even as we've made very clear that our preferred course is dialogue and diplomacy, we have continued to make prudent preparations vis-a-vis the other path, and that is defense and deterrence. And so it is up to us and to our partners and allies to make very clear the costs that would befall the Russian Federation if renewed invasion were to go forward. We've been very clear about that. Again, to Matt's question, perhaps too clear in the words of some. But that's what we've been engaged in all along. Even as we continue to prefer the path of dialogue and diplomacy, we're continuing to, with our partners and allies, prepare with defense and deterrence.
Right. And the final thing is about just an update, whether you have an update on the number of Americans in Ukraine.
Sure. So as you know, and we've discussed this in the context both of Ukraine and other countries, but you well know by now that we typically don't provide numbers of U.S. citizens living in or traveling to another country. And we don't do that for all the reasons that are very familiar to you by now. United States citizens are not required to register when they travel overseas. Those that do opt to register, most of them presumably do not deregister when they leave a country. When it comes to the registration of individuals in our so-called STEP system, we're also not in a position to verify individuals who sign up. And in fact, we know from previous experiences that international organizations, third country nationals, many people who aren't U.S. citizens do sign up for various reasons. Now, having said all that, our embassies do compile estimates of U.S. citizens in their countries for time to time for contingency planning purposes. And as you know, our embassy in Kyiv has been engaged in robust contingency planning together with officials here at the department and across the interagency for some time now. These estimates are based on the best available information specific to that country, pulling on all available inputs. But even then, we are not in a position to call any particular figure authoritative or comprehensive. But I will say that for Ukraine in October, which I'll come to, that's noteworthy, the estimate was that there were 6,600 U.S. citizens residing in Ukraine. and that is in addition to American tourists and visitors who may have been there at the time. Now, we reached that estimate, as I said, based on all of the inputs that were available to us, and that includes data from our Ukrainian government partners, interactions with American organizations in Ukraine, like the Chamber of Commerce, exchange programs and international schools, and the number of people applying for U.S. citizen services, such as passports at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv. So as you will see, those inputs are instructive, but they are not necessarily dispositive when it comes to a firm, accurate, comprehensive number. But that is the estimate we were able to arrive at last October, 6,600. Now, our embassy also estimated, again, in October, before Russia's military buildup began, that at any given time, any given point in time, there could be 16,000 U.S. citizens, U.S. citizen tourists and visitors in Ukraine. Now, this was back in October, and ever since, as you know, we have been urging U.S. citizens not to travel to Ukraine, and in fact, those warnings began that very month in October 2021, October of last year. It was, in the first instance, a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and epidemiological conditions in Ukraine, and of course, more recently, due to the increased threat from Russia. And so, while we estimated at the time there could be 16,000 tourists and visitors, our best assessment is that that number is much, much lower now. And we do not believe this figure to be an accurate reflection of where we are now, since many of those American tourists, many of those visitors, presumably would have departed the country, never intended to stay more than a few days, a couple weeks, or have heeded our concerted messaging, including in recent weeks, that American citizens should strongly consider departing the country, that they should avail themselves of the plentiful commercial options that are available, both due to COVID, but of course more recently and more acutely due to the risk of a Russian invasion.
Right. My final one from me is, like, are you guys doing any, undertaking any effort to reach out to these people, like the 6,600?
The answer to that is unequivocally yes. We have, as a matter of course, this happens all around the world, but especially in places where the situation has the potential to destabilize quite rapidly, which of course is the situation in Ukraine. We have been regularly messaging American citizens, sending out notices, urging them, as we have done in recent days and even in recent hours, to strongly consider availing themselves of the available commercial options and departing the country now. We have been issuing that message for some time now. We will continue to urge American citizens who, despite months of warnings that Americans should not travel to Ukraine, despite a more recent campaign to educate American citizens who, for whatever reason, remain in Ukraine, that they should leave, we will continue to be very clear through every channel we can to convey that message to American citizens, whether it's social media, whether it's on our website, whether it is through engagement with reporters like all of you. We have engaged with diaspora reporters as well, again, availing ourselves of every appropriate channel to convey in strong terms the guidance that Americans should strongly consider leaving Ukraine at this time using available options.
Now, when you talk about 6,600, does that include U.S. government personnel?
These are private U.S. citizens.
Oh, private. Okay. And then you said that you think that the number, the 16,000 potentially at any one time, would have decreased significantly over the last 4 months. Do you also think that the 6,600 would have decreased significantly, or no? Do you not have?
So the difference between those two numbers is the 16,000 are visitors and tourists. So
Right.
presumably
But do you
people.
think that some are, you know, some kind of percentage
Yeah.
of the 6,600 who were living there permanently or,
It's
residing there have also left since October.
So the short answer is that we don't have a way of knowing. But if you take your question on the basis of human nature rather than any sort of consular knowledge, I think the short answer is probably that a greater percentage of the visitors and tourists that were there in October are no longer there, that 16,000 number is lower. When it comes to the 6,600 figure, again, we don't have perfect insight into it, but many of these individuals are likely to be dual U.S.-Ukrainian citizens, many of whom consider Ukraine to be home. The decision to leave for them may be more difficult than it would be for someone who is there for a business opportunity or there for tourism purposes, for example.